Hi folks, Don Dillard here with Dillard Philosophy. In this video I'm going to cover some footage from a very interesting case involving texting and suicide. The basic story here is that a young lady convinced her boyfriend through text messages to commit suicide. There are three things about this case which I think are particularly interesting. First, her lawyers are going to argue that, well, she was on medication and her medication explains her odd behavior. Secondly, they're going to argue that Roy's death was a suicide and therefore responsibility for it is ultimately Roy's. And third, they're going to argue that the text messages are actually protected free speech, that it's a First Amendment issue. And I think it's that third point which makes this case so interesting. I mean, really, is this a free speech issue? Is that a compelling consideration? So without further ado, here's a collection of broadcasts about this issue.
Videos a teenager made before killing himself are now key evidence in the manslaughter trial of his friend. Conrad Roy's videos offer a glimpse of the 18-year-old struggles with depression. Prosecutors say that Michelle Carter bombarded Roy with texts and urged him to take his life because she wanted attention.
Michelle Carter's attorneys argue that Roy was already suicidal long before he met her. In July 2014, Roy died inside this truck from carbon monoxide poisoning. As he was dying, prosecutors say he was on the phone with Michelle Carter for 46 minutes. Days before, in numerous texts, Carter, then 17, offered Roy suggestions on how to take his own life and lectured him when he wavered. "But I'm tired of you not taking this seriously. Like, if you aren't really gonna do it, then stop pretending that you are," one message said. Another read, "Hang yourself, jump off a building, stab yourself. I don't know. There's a lot of ways." The defense is expected to blame Carter's medication for her odd behavior and argue responsibility for Roy's death ultimately lies with him. In order to be convicted on the manslaughter charge, the judge would have to agree that Carter's words caused Roy's death. But remember, she was 35 miles away.
It's a first-of-its-kind case merging technology, First Amendment issues, and the law. And criminal defense attorney Phil Tracy joins us this evening. Thank you so much for coming in.
Great to be here with both of you.
Yes.
So the prosecution is going to focus on one particular moment, which seems to be the most shocking, that Roy allegedly got out of the car, he was scared, and called Michelle Carter, and she allegedly told him to get back in the vehicle. He did, and that's when he ended his life. In addition to what came out in court today, that she contacted him 40 times in the last few weeks of his life asking when he was going to kill himself. So at what point does this cross the line from being her right to free speech to criminal activity?
20-year-old Michelle Carter of Plainville, Massachusetts, waiving her right to a jury this week in an unusual trial over whether she drove her high school boyfriend to suicide. In text messages, Carter, who was 17 at the time, told Conrad Roy, quote, "You need to just do it." When Roy expressed second thoughts, Carter encouraged her boyfriend to get back into his truck, where authorities later found his body and the vehicle filled with carbon monoxide. Prosecutors say the text messages and phone calls made before and during the suicide prove that Carter persuaded Roy to kill himself. Carter's lawyer argues the text messages are protected free speech. Her decision to forego the right to a jury means members of her community will not get to decide her fate. The case will now be tried by the judge. Carter is charged with involuntary manslaughter and faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted.
Carter, a guilty finding having entered on the indictment charging you with the involuntary manslaughter of Conrad Roy III, now sentences you to 2.5 years in the Bristol County House of Correction.
I'm interested to know what you guys think about this. I think it's a pretty fascinating issue. Take care.